and welcome to a very special edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interviews. I am joined, of course, as always, by my best friend in the entire world, Lee Elias, over in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am Ray Carcillo in sunny Los Angeles, California. But we are joined by someone from the Central Time Zone today, the one and only executive editor of Game Informer, the one and only, the great Andrew Reiner in Minneapolis. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Wow, that's the best intro I've ever had. It's all downhill from here. I didn't expect that here. Thank you, Ray.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show, buddy. I mean, I try, it's all pomp and circumstance, and then we get into the nitty gritty, and then it's
well, we're a professional operation here, bud. Okay. So we do everything just like yourself. We take everything very seriously, but not seriously.
Yeah, that's all I do. Everything's serious. So let's get to it.
Of course, Andrew is not just you're not just the executive editor of Game Informer, though that's what most people might know you best as. You also have your own comic book podcast, the Spectacular Comic Book Podcast, correct?
Yes. Well, it's on hiatus because comic books are gone until next week. Then they come back. So we'll bring the show back.
Yes, so that's also good. You're also an accomplished author. We're going to talk about that as well.
Okay.
But we're going to start, of course, talking about video games. This is an interesting time, of course. We are in the middle of a pandemic. As you mentioned, comic books are on hiatus. Sports are on hiatus. But video games seem to be the one thing that has been least affected, at least in terms of releasing content, getting stuff out there to the people. I know you just did. Actually, we're recording this on May the 22nd. You actually just had a review go live this morning on GameInformer.com for Man-Eater, which looks like a lot of fun. But what do you
probably describe what that's about, so people aren't left dreaming what Man-Eater means.
No, see, now we can't do that. Now we have to let them, if you want to find out, go read his review. That's a dynamite drop.
Well, we're going to get into a Man-Eater, but I want to get your thoughts first on, what do you think this has done for the game industry overall this time period? Because obviously we've also had conventions canceled. We've had there have been some bad with the good of people still being able to obviously stay at home, play games. There's been a lot of game sales. What's your overall census of how video games are doing right now during this time?
Yeah, you're totally right that it's a weird thing to say that they're kind of one of the winners of the pandemic, right? Like one of the things that's still kind of trending upward because people are looking for that escapism stuff they can do in their home and video games and streaming. I think streaming's the other thing that's really kind of booming right now. Netflix, Hulu, you name it. There's a lot of people just watching whatever, binging as much as they can. And video games, I think, give you those deeper, adventures that you can go on. Animal Crossing is one of the best-selling games of the year. It's one of Nintendo's best-selling Switch games ever now, within just a matter of months, because it is that idyllic resort vacation-like experience that you can't get right now unless, you might go out and die. It is this escapism of being able to leave the real world behind and just kind of enjoy life where everybody's friendly, everything's good, the sun's always shining. You might get stung by a wasp, but that's as bad as it gets. There's no violence. It's just all peaceful and fun.
They're not murder hornets that will sting.
Right. Yeah, those are here now too. Great.
Yeah, not that game. The game of life, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Animal Crossing. I mean, it's doing very, very well. Of course, it also hit at just the right time. It hit literally at the beginning of all of this.
Yeah.
The first, I think really at least here in California, I think we had only been stay-at-home orders had only been in effect for a week when it dropped. So I think that also helps. And of course, the rise of digital games, right? The fact that we don't have to go to the store to buy anything now for the most part, right? I mean, yes, sure, if you really want to, you can go to a Best Buy and they'll drop it off in your car, but really, why wouldn't you just go to the Xbox store or the Nintendo eShop or whatever whatever your preference is, pick your poison and download it digitally. Which actually brings me to my next question: is that we're on the cusp of a new console generation. Mm-hmm. We're 6 months away at this point, barring any unforeseen delays due to the world. But at this point, probably about 6 to 7 months away. What we're expecting. Nothing's been officially announced yet, by the way. We're just based on previous history of when consoles typically drop. Typically, it's the end of right before the holidays.
Yeah.
We know it's going to be another physical generation. We know both Microsoft and Sony have committed to another generation with disk drives. But what do you feel? Is this going to be the last generation, you think, of physical game media, as it seems to be? And this pandemic really only shines a light on it, that people are moving more and more to digital only.
That's a tough question. I thought this generation would be the last, like going into everybody's talking about streaming being the next thing, not just downloading games. Remember, you think back, you're like to the beginning of Xbox 360, it was like you can download like 28K or whatever. They had a cap on what you could download, and then it was like 512 or whatever. And you're like, this will never take off. Like, we're just always going to be buying discs. These games are so big. And now it's like games get so big, it's like you're downloading 100 gig. Well, they're like, well, you could just stream it in seconds. But now you're looking at that going like, well, streaming will never work. Like, there's too much latency, right? Like, there's too much lag. Like, that technology is not going to work. But I think the answer we're starting to see is we're going to have everything. We're going to have physical media. We're going to have downloads. We're going to have streaming. And all three of those, I think, are going to go on for not just this generation, but maybe one more, maybe two more. It's just a matter of if these console devs will put the drive in there. And it might not even be a drive. It just might be a chip that you stick into a USB port or something like that to download the data. But why limit the audience when consumers are, accessing it in so many different ways? Like, you don't want to just cut someone off when that audience is still pretty sizable, and physical still is. So I just don't see that changing anytime soon.
Very cool. So now we'll get it. You mentioned before we got on here that you were playing some Pokemon Go. Lee is a diehard Pokemon Go fan. I am a diehard Pokemon Go fan. But we were chatting about some of the difficulties still of playing the game, even here in the pandemic. The Niantic's tried to do some things, but and I want to get both of your thoughts on this. Obviously, Lee, Lee has a couple of small kids at home. Andrew, you were just talking about the Sinnoh event, how much of a pain it is. What has your guys been experience with Pokemon Go, and are they doing enough in this one particular case during this time to continue to appeal to their fan base? And actually, Lee, we'll start with you actually.
Well, the first thing I'll say is I'd like to congratulate everyone on the call for completing the Philadelphia challenge. We all got the badges in 3 different time zones, which also is ironic because Andrew, I don't know if you know this, we all would have been there probably if this didn't happen. I didn't know you were playing that, but I talked to Ray. I said, "Yo, man, he just completed this too. We all would have met in the park. It would have been awesome." So
we could have done it live, walking. It would have been great.
We'll have to have a replay of that. Here's what I think. I'm on two minds of it. I think one is I applaud Niantic they're clearly trying to make the game more accessible at home, and it has gotten better and better and better as they've gone on. And as we're recording this, we all got the message over the last 24 hours. They're going to actually shut down the game for 24 hours, I believe, on June 1st. Which makes me believe there's a massive update coming. Because they've kind of stumbled a little bit, in my opinion, in terms of getting this going. Some of the features didn't work sometimes, some of them do. I think the regional type challenges that we've been getting are great. I think the perks have been really great. I'm not so crazy that doing raids, you have to buy the passes once you kind of get past that. I thought that was a little bit cheap on their part, but I also understand it from a business point of view. They got to get their in-app purchases. So I would just say I'd give them a strong B+, considering the situation. I'm still playing it. There are times when I lag from playing it if I've completed a challenge and there's nothing really going on. I just have to kind of get my Pokestop spin for the day in a Pokemon. But they are actively pursuing a better experience with what's going on. I can't complain about that. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would give them a B+ too in terms of effort. I think I'm going to probably go to jail for like being a stalker or some weird voyeur, because what I'm doing is like I don't want to get out and walk through my neighborhood because there's like a lot of walkers, so I'm just in my car like just slowly rolling to like hatch my eggs. But I'm just going past these houses, just like, and anytime you're in your home and you see someone doing that, you're like, that guy's up to no good.
What's he doing? No, he just caught a Bidoof, man.
Yeah, he's scoping this place out, like. But it's like, no, I'm just trying to, walk my buddy, that's one of the challenges. And everything they're doing right now, like to your point of it being a B+, one of the negatives is like having to walk things. like earn a candy or hatch an egg. Like that stuff's just it's annoying at this point. They're doing a good job with spawns. I usually only get one at my house. Now I get 3 at any given time, and incense has really helped that as well.
Really working.
And then I have gyms all around my house that I can't reach, but now I can with the raid passes. But again, they cost money. That sucks. I wish I could get them from stops or anything like that, but some challenges I think you do get one, or one of the last events we got one or something.
Yeah, I think in one of the last events it was a reward. But yeah, no, I'm much like you, Andrew, where I'm kind of using my car a lot more to play the game. Like I did go for a walk one day, and also out here in LA, we're starting to get hit with our first heat wave of the year. So I came back, I went out for 20 minutes, it was 95 degrees. I was just dripping sweat, and I'm like, this game's not worth it. I was just gonna drive. But just driving from hotspot to hotspot is really kind of what I'm doing right now for the game too.
Yeah, so. And if any police are listening to this, I'm not looking at my phone. It's just on.
Yeah.
And I'm walking a Pokemon. I'm walking a Snover or something. Like just chill out. Everything's good.
There's no legal precedent for that. Yeah, they can't arrest you for that. What were you doing? You got 5 years for walking your Magikarp. That doesn't work.
The Gyarados was worth it, I swear.
Yeah.
Oh man. But so no, that's I think I agree with you guys. I think B+, A- range for sure. Like they could be doing more, but it is good to see that they are aware, and obviously people are still playing. I still know, like I'm still getting gifts regularly from friends and vice versa, and I'm sending them out, and it seems like everybody's still involved. So I mean, good on them to at least to maintain their fan base in a tough time where a game like this could really have suffered.
Well, and again, the fact that I'm very intrigued about this full day shutdown. That's unprecedented, and it's in a lot of ways it's dangerous because you're cutting your audience off for 24 hours, which is like it's a habit, right? When you say you do this 10,000 times, it's a habit. So you're kind of cutting the habit. So I don't think it's gonna take people away for too long, but those updates better be worth a day off for them, or they're gonna lose a lot of people.
Do you think there will be any? Or are they just like cleaning up servers? Have they hinted at anything at this point?
I don't think they've hinted at anything. I really think it's more maintenance more than anything, and kind of like Lee said, hopefully some of the features that have kind of been a little bit buggy up to this point. Like my game's been crashing a lot lately. Like I'm just hoping that that stuff will kind of get ironed out. And I also want to say I don't think it's a full 24 hours. I think it's just a global shutdown. So during I think it's like an 8-hour period, but like if you're on the West Coast,
kind of rolling.
Yeah, I think it's like from the West Coast, I think it's gonna be like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., which kind of sucks because those are prime hours.
Yeah.
But
here's the other thing. We know from what I've read, I know they're adding into the game raiding from anywhere. So I could invite you both to a raid in my hometown. I imagine that's a pretty big update.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's coming. They've confirmed that is going to be coming. That there's international raiding at this point. So, and I think that's very smart. Ray and I were very disappointed where that wasn't the case with the other raid from home situation. Yeah. So, I'm looking forward to what that might accomplish. That could really connect people in a brand new way.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes against everything this game was.
Yeah.
But it's kind of what it needs to be, right? At least for not just the near future, but maybe into all of 2021.
They got to survive somehow. Yeah. It's funny because we don't have group raids in Philadelphia. I don't know if, Andrew, you knew that or not. Like, so in LA, Ray talks about hundreds of people doing these things together. Yeah. They're being a weight. Here, there's no community here, but a lot of people play. But it's just very rare you'll see people raiding together. Some of that's probably a crime issue, which makes a lot of sense in inner city Philadelphia. but other parts of it's just, I don't know. On the East Coast, we just tend not to find other players. And it's very funny when you do find another player and you kind of creep up to the same Pokestop because you give each other awkward looks like you playing? And they're like,
what are you doing with your phone there?
Yeah. Yo, man, you doing this over there? Yeah, that's what it's like over here. Anyway. It's different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yeah, for us in Minnesota, we have the Mall of America.
Yeah.
Which is like proof that we could build a Death Star if you ever go inside of it. It looks like the inside, like these huge beams that are bigger than you've ever seen.
Yeah. Roller coasters. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, there's a theme park in there and all that, but thousands of people on those, I kid you not, like hundreds to thousands on any kind of community day are there.
Yeah,
so that's when I would do like most of my rating, getting the 5 stars. There'd be like at any raid point, there'd be a couple hundred people and you'd get in a group of 20 and away you go. You're done in a second or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
out
the only
here,
place here.
out here, there's a huge community. I'm part of like 3 different online groups, and they're constantly people like, and credit to the organizers. Like these guys that, they got on board very early and were very much like, throw us a couple bucks just to keep the community up and going or whatever. And then like these guys organize for a while there. Obviously they stopped with the pandemic, but every weekend, like it was probably like 40 or 50 of us. And then on the big community days, like we go to like CSUN, which, the local college campus, or some of the big places, and you would just see hundreds of people just like swarming looking for shiny chimchars. Like it's just insane.
When people ask me in the future, like, why'd you move out west? I'm gonna just tell, well, listen, raiding wasn't easy in Philly, and I had to.
It wasn't safe.
You moved out west for Pokemon Go. You didn't.
Yeah.
One of those.
I went for Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Didn't turn out so well.
Yeah.
Get charged.
That would definitely be
it
a
turns out.
mistake. Oh goodness. Well, speaking of other things that we're playing right now, Andy, we mentioned you of course, your review again for Maneater is live today on GameInformer.com for the latest from Tripwire Interactive. Tell people a little bit about what you thought about that, because I'm really intrigued by this game, and you could kind of in a way simplify it, I feel like, to where it's like if you don't know if you guys played Donut County, where basically you're just playing a hole that's trying to eat everything. I feel like in a very simple sense, you're that kind of the same thing, but you're a shark. So tell me a little bit about tell us about Maneater.
Yeah, it's kind of the Jaws fantasy. That's a weird thing to say. I mean, if you ever wondered what it'd be like to be Jaws, and feeding on whatever you can to become the biggest shark in the ocean, that's what Maneater is. And it has an interesting hook to it. Like, not only that, like being the shark right there, you're like, oh, that sounds fun, right? Or different. But it's also framed within a reality show where you're following this hunter named Scaly Pete. And the way the game begins is Scaly Pete kills your mother. And as he's pulling her up on his boat, he cuts her open because he realizes she's pregnant. He pulls this baby bull shark, out of the womb, and then scars you, cuts you on the head, and then throws you in the water because he's going to hunt you when you get big enough. So you end up becoming like, that ain't happening. I'm like John Wick now, right? Like, I'm going to get revenge on you. So you feed on everything in the ocean. And in these, you're in swamps, you're going into all these different biomes. You go into like SeaWorld, of course, with the killer whales.
Nice.
Feeding on everything you can. And everything you eat gives you experience points, which will in turn level you up and make you grow. So you go from baby to teen to adult to elder to mega, like the megalodon. You're just this beast that can like jump out of the water and smash boats, and you're evolved to a point where you can go up on land and just feast on humans. Like, they think they're safe, and you're just like running them over and hitting them with your tail. It's so much fun. It's goofy. It's a little rough around the edges, as you would expect. But this is a game I couldn't put down. Like, I was just like, I got to see where this is going. I gotta take down Scaly Pete.
Now, listen, we're big Disney fans here. So if there's anybody from Disney listening, you just inspired me to say this. Look, Bambi 2. Okay? Yeah. Let's make it happen. We all want to see what happens. You've sold me on that description alone.
Yeah, that's all the game is, though. I mean, it's just that you just feed. And then there's like the shark is kind of a tourist too. So as you're like trolling through these waters and you're discovering new places, you'll see these landmarks, and there'll be like these underwater like little dioramas that you go to, and then you have a narrator that's telling you, it's because it's like a reality show. You have this narrator. I can't remember the actor's name, but they got
Chris
a comedian,
Parnell, right?
Yeah, Chris Parnell. He's great.
Yeah.
But he'll tell you about these landmarks. But there's a lot of fun like pop culture references. There was like one that was like Godzilla related. I saw Pennywise from It underwater in like in the sewers. I was like, oh boy, that's scary. And then even like Demolition Man, it goes into like just all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah,
awesome.
But it's totally worth playing. Like, I think 2 days, 4-hour sessions, you'll be through it, and you'll be glad you played it.
Was the Demolition Man the 3 shells or something else?
Yes.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, and they talk about how you use them. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Sorry, I had to guess that.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Is there anything else you're playing right now? Anything you can tell us about or anything or?
Yeah, I'm reviewing Fury Unleashed right now.
Okay.
And I think next will be Last of Us 2. I don't have it yet, but as soon as I get my hands on that, that'll be next. But Fury Unleashed is an interesting roguelike do you ever play Dead Cells?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's like Dead Cells, but whereas Dead Cells is inspired by Castlevania, this is inspired by Contra. So it's a side-scrolling shooter. You can play it co-op, but every time you die, you go back to square one. You got to start over, but you earn experience and currency that you can use to power yourself up, make it a little further next time, keep grinding. It's fun. It's really well made. The mechanics are sound. It's a cool game.
Nice. That's kind of similar in a way. I just finished a roguelike or a roguelite myself, The Persistence, which is kind of like if Dead Space was a roguelite. Ooh. where it's you are this person, basically you're on a deep space exploration trip, and you're going to be gone from Earth from so long that they actually have cloning machines on the ship. So if anything happens to a person, we can just reclone them, and we won't be down a person. What ends up happening, of course, is that the clone machine goes on the fritz and starts making malformed zombie clones, basically, of all the crew, and they run roughshod over the ship. And it's up to you and basically the person who kind of serves as your narrator and your guide to put the ship back together into a way you can turn around and limp back to Earth. And save yourselves. But each time you die, there's one like auxiliary clone machine that is still working. So every time you die, you pop out of the only working clone machine, and you keep going. But you're constantly sneaking around trying to avoid these zombies, and of course, you're gonna die a lot. That's why it's called the Persistence.
It's such a great name for a roguelite. Like I think that's great.
Yeah, it was actually. The only negative, and we talked about this early on the show a couple weeks ago, is that it was originally a PSVR game, and they just ported it now to Xbox and PlayStation 4 regularly and PC. In that there are still a couple of mechanics where you're like, I see you wanted this to work with a headset and with
Is
control.
It just the two lenses?
No,
Duals?
No, they didn't do that. They did fix that, but. But like some of the cursors, like instead of like pressing a button to open up a box to like scrummage for stuff, you have to look at it for a certain amount of time with your cursor. So I'm like, okay, I see where this was a VR game that now you've ported to the other consoles and stuff. But it's it's solid. It's pretty solid. So I've been playing that similar.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, that just dropped actually yesterday. I think that just dropped. So, But yeah, so a lot of good stuff being played out there. I'm also personally playing MLB The Show a lot, obviously to get my sports fix. And now, Andy, you are a huge sports guy, huge baseball guy, huge Cubs fan.
Yeah, I should have worn my Cubs hat here.
We'd be remiss to not mention that your grandmother actually was the first female Cub reporter for the Chicago Tribune, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So she worked with the Cubs. My dad, the nicest guy in the world, he was a pastor, like just the sweetest guy, giving everyone faith. But immediately, like as soon as I was old enough to have like memories that would maintain, it was like, you bleed Cubby blue or you're no son of mine. You know what I mean? It's like, so I was pulled into that world, and I would spend, a couple weeks during summers. My parents would go on like these boat cruises with friends and all that stuff. But my sister and I would spend our summers in Chicago with my grandparents. So my grandma she was retired, but she was still part of this Cubs community. So every once in a while we'd go to like a convention center or something, and she's talking with people, and it's like Billy Williams and, like Ernie Banks, and me being, too young and stupid to realize I should be soaking this up, was just kind of sitting in the corner reading comic books and dumb stuff like that. But not dumb stuff. Comics are great, but
so you're amongst friends. Don't worry.
I should have been like latched onto Ernie Banks's leg, like adopt me or something.
Yeah, teach me your ways.
Make me an all-star.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, dude. I mean, so there you're now you're a game journalist. So the journalism kind of ran in your blood.
Yeah, that's what she told me. Like, she's gone now, but yeah, like early on when I started it, I started what, age 17, 18, writing for Game Informer. She's like, you're following in my footsteps. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is cool. Lee, I know you had a question about, because speaking of sports and sports video games, of course, we've, Andrew, you mentioned you've been in Game Informer for a while. Both you and I probably pretty familiar with sports games and the stuff that's come around over the years. But Lee, I know you had a question about sports games and how they've evolved over the years, right?
Yeah, it's funny. So Andy, we talked about this before the show. I've been reading your stuff since FuncoLand existed, and again, we talked about this. So for our older listeners, you'll know what that is. For the younger listeners, before there was GameStop, there was another place, and then before that, there was FuncoLand. So this is like a place you could still, trade in NES games at the time for a horrible cost before they were worth more than the world, right? So I've been reading you a long time, which means that you've been in the industry long enough to really see the full expansion, evolution of a lot of sports games, all right? So I'm a huge hockey guy, although I've played all the sports games, but I'm just going to use like NHL games as an example, where we start out with obviously Blades of Steel and just hockey, and then EA comes into the picture. And then for a while there, EA NHL Hockey was running the show. It was Game of the Year a lot. And I remember I was lucky enough to kind of grow up in that time period where the game just got better and better and better every year. And then it just kind of fell off a cliff. All right. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of NHL fans on the show that just no one seems to be liking EA NHL Hockey right now, or it's not smart enough for its own good. And then you look at the other franchises like Madden, FIFA. I mean, baseball's in a different world right now. Basketball is too. But can you give us like the 360 view of having kind of lived through all that evolution and where you A, see it going, and B, maybe what they're doing right and wrong right now, to kind of right the ship, wrong the ship, depending on what sport we're talking about?
Yeah, I think the big problem we're looking at right now, I'll start with the negative on it, right? Like these games are great, but a lot of them are great. But the big negative is you don't have competition to fuel your endeavors, right? Like all of these companies have kind of monopolies, especially EA with the NFL and I mean NHL and FIFA had Pro Evo, like that was, I think that really helped that to a degree, but NBA's kind of 2K's run away with that. Back in the day, there was always tons of competition, whether it was game day or quarterback club, there's just everybody was vying for the consumer dollar, and you just don't have that now. And it's a shame because you saw 2K coming up with NFL 2K. Remember that? Like, they were like, we're going to sell this year. We have a great game, 2K5. We're going to sell this for $20. We're going to go right after Madden. We think we could take them down. And then what did EA do? They bought the exclusive rights to the NFL and just killed 2K's game, which is still one of the best sports football games to date. So I think that's a problem. And to your point about NHL, you look at ESPN.com, where is NHL on there? It's just, there's just a lack of, I don't know if it's interest. I mean, obviously stadiums are still packed. There's still a lot of fans, but in terms of just like competing against these other sports, it just doesn't seem to be in the same camp. And I think that hurts the sales of the game, which in turn means a lower budget, less new features. I think that's really hurt that one, especially when you're trying to do annualized games, right? That's a tricky thing.
It brings up another question real quick, is one of the things Ray and I were discussing on this show is you said it's about, year after year, a game every year. We're wondering now how long it is before maybe they don't release a game every single year. Maybe it's every console generation, maybe it's every 5 years, and then they just continually update the game. Because you can do that now and effectively be okay, and it would make the fans a lot happier. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's the future of sports games?
I do. I think they're going to become a platform more than an annualized game. There will be the big, give us your $60 at the beginning of each season or something akin to that. But yeah, I think they will become things that they just continually update. Like, hey, we added in a new home run derby, or some kind of battle royale type of tournament that, they use to bring you back at the right times. There will be the downtime when the actual sport's gone. where they can maybe kind of work on a lot of these big new things and then come back in a big way at the beginning of the new seasons.
Yeah, I think that would garner a lot of interest and respect back too. I mean, I know with the NHL fans I hear, it's just they don't seem to be listening to their fan base too much. Now, with that said, and I go back and forth on this, and again, Ray and I discussed this. There is some amount you should listen to the fans, but at the end of the day, you make the game, you're the expert. You have to make the best product, and I respect that. But if you get that disconnect, it becomes a major problem. At least for the consumer on that side of it. And yeah, I hear what you're saying about NHL, and you're totally right about the past. I remember ESPN having an NHL game at the turn of the century, NHL Face-Off. There was hits like Blitz.
Yeah.
Competition does breed better results. So yeah, that's great insight. Thanks for that. I'm going to grab a prop I forgot to grab real quick just to show you guys. Ray, you take over for a second.
That's fine. Well, I was just going to say what's kind of funny though too is that I actually think I understand why EA made the deal that they did, because I mean EA could see football was be more profitable in the long run. But the sad thing is that people forget, but EA's baseball game, MVP baseball at the time, 2003, 4, and 5 were really good and was really nipping on the heels of 2K's baseball game, which of course obviously when that trade happened, MLB 2K went downhill. Madden continued to start to distance itself, start to make people not quite forget about NFL 2K5, but they started to make up the ground that they were clearly starting to lose in those first few years of that decade. And of course, in the long run, it's paid off for them tremendously. And then, of course, part of that deal, MLB 2K is now dead, and all we have is the show. Although hopefully, from last I heard that this is happening, is that MLB The Show is now going to be on all the consoles starting next year. Which is a huge deal because RBI baseball is not cutting it. But
that turn of the century thing. Yeah. That mid 2000s, everybody bought all the rights. It's hindsight. It was just a major mistake. And I found the thing I forgot to look at this relic that I found from the past.
There you go. Is that the PC version?
Yeah, man. NHL 99 for PC. Eric Lindros is on the front cover. As it says, game features new mocap animations, improved AI, beginner level. I love this. Mark Crawford coaching strategies. Oh, and you can play multiple seasons now. This is great. NHL 99 coming to a PC near you. This is not Mac compatible.
Ice cold intimidation. Love it.
Oh man, you got it.
Big boxes. Relic. That's so cool.
Yeah, I kept that forever. I got a triple play downstairs for the for the N64 too, but I forgot to bring that up. Sorry, Ray. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's all right. But no, I was also going to say, though, I think that going back to your guys' points about sports games becoming a service, I think that it would also lend itself better to the dev cycles and whatnot, because you see that now with a lot of the console generations where the games, the developers, because they have such a short turnaround for these annual titles, even when you have multiple teams working on it, you have okay, here's the first game of a generation. We're just starting to figure out the hardware. We're starting to see what we can do graphically. And now we're going to start doing everything we can, implementing the new features. And then it's like, oh, a new generation's coming. We just got our dev kits. Okay, we're going to start, tapering down away from this generation, kind of doing the roster update annual title as it seems that we're going to start learning the new hardware and then kind of start this cycle again where we're going to go up a peak, down a valley, up a peak, down a valley. At least that's kind of what my thoughts on the matter is. And hopefully you're right. This Sports as a Service will fix this.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing when you get that new game at the beginning of a new generation because you're expecting to see the future of games and your favorite sports game taken to the next level. But you remember some of those early Maddens on 360 and all that stuff just a disaster.
Yeah. Even this generation, Xbox One, PS4, same thing. It's just it's something that, again, hopefully Sports as a Service, this will help remedy some of the downtime and the difficulties that these guys have learning the new hardware because of their strenuous annual cycle.
Well, again, it was Mortal Kombat 11 that really made us think about this really in depth because of what they're doing with the Aftermath expansion that they're putting on. And it made us think, fighting games are in a very similar situation, right, where they're struggling. And that was a really smart way of doing it. And Ray described it perfectly. It's 60% more game for 60% of the cost, or 70% of the cost. It's I can get behind that as a consumer. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I like the game. I own the game. I want to play more of it. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward in the future.
Yeah, I think for Madden, what they need to do it before the year 2025 because they already have a game that's Madden 25, right?
Yeah.
So they cannot get in that scenario. Like, what are you going to call that game?
Yeah.
I guess they could just call it Madden 25 again. We got Battlefield and all these games that are just defaulted again.
And I hope they confuse themselves. Maybe they'll start using the Roman numerals. That'd be funny.
There you go.
Madden XV3.
That's one. There you go. That's one way to get by it. But so speaking of sports, we've talked about a lot about football, talking about baseball, but sports in general. Andy, I want to get your thoughts on: are we going to have sports this summer? Are we going to get the MLB and MLBPA continuing in talks, NHL, NHLPA in talks, football? Fortunately, able to kick the can a little bit on this. Sure, they don't have OTAs right now, but it's not really affecting their schedule that badly. What do you think is going to happen with sports with the state of the world right now?
Yeah, well, the pandemic is, I mean, we all want it to be done, but it's just starting.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. We had the worst day in new recorded cases, yesterday or 2 days ago? Like, we're not hitting a curve. It's a rocket. This thing is still going up.
Yeah.
For the MLB, I think the MLB and then the playoffs for NHL and NBA, I think are a lost cause. I hate to say that. Like, I miss my Cubbies so much. I miss having, the MLB package.
Yeah.
They better refund me, by the way, if this doesn't happen. But
I get
just
store credit.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that mean? You'll find out.
Yeah. It's become such a part of my life, and with where technology is now, I don't have to turn on WGN. I have every game on my phone, and I pretty much watch like 80 to 90% of the games each year. For baseball, that's a lot. Even if I'm working, I can have it on, and I just don't see it happening. I don't know, even with no crowds, if one player gets it, that means the entire team and opposing teams, maybe even in baseball, you're talking every 3 games, you're cycling in a different team.
Yeah.
What do? Do you lock them down for 15 days? What did they say? Like, they just don't play. Like, that right there throws the entire season off.
So here's some quick news for both of you, Ray. I don't even know if you know this. And this plays to what you're talking about. The NHL apparently is extremely close right now to finalizing a 24-team playoff and ready to move forward. Now, whether they do it or not, I mean, there's always a lot of hoops to jump through. We'll see. But I'm only saying this because Andy, I'm very close with the NHL. I have a lot of connections in the NHL. They're really close to pulling the trigger on this. And it's funny because the same day that came out, it also came out that a doctor said, "Don't do this." So I don't know what's going to happen. We've said a lot on the show that we do applaud the leagues for at least trying. Like, you can tell they're trying to figure something out. But yeah, every plan I've seen is massive quarantine for the players in a one location or 2 locations, and just no fanfare, nothing, no media. It's just you're in, you play, and you're out. If it moves forward with that, and then like you said, if someone gets it, there's I don't know what the contingency plan is. You have to shut the league down again. So it'll be really interesting. But I wanted you to know that like the NHL apparently is extremely close to doing something here. And then the NBA is looking to do it at Disney World. I don't know if you heard that one or not.
Yeah.
Looking the players up in Disney World.
Like the NHL, I guess you think of how the player uniforms are. They're kind of like RoboCop skating around on the ice, right? Like, they're fairly protected. Yeah. Obviously, they're going to be sweating and stuff like that. The NFL, I don't know how you do it. You got these giant guys laying on top of each other. They're saying they're building helmets with like masks in them.
Yeah.
But I just think about them breathing so heavily, exerting so much energy. That seems like a disaster. And then, like, I don't know if you saw what Mike Trout said about he's not going to miss the birth of his first kid. So he's going to go to the hospital for that. Does that mean he's quarantined then for 14 days until he's cleared to be able to play again? There's just so many things. Like, how do you treat friends and, like family and
well, you won't be around them. You just made me have a really good Geeks for like sports moment. Can you imagine if all the football players looked like Mysterio? And like that's what we got. You just got 11 people on each side with just the fishbowl on, and you have no idea who's under there. That might be worth seeing. No, but seriously, that might be what it takes. You never know.
Yeah, and I hate to say it. I don't want to be like this terrible person for saying this, but like,
no, you're not.
I don't see it happening for this year, maybe even next year, like safely. Someone's going to try it though. You're totally right. Like the NHL might pull the trigger, or maybe even NBA or MLB, they might pull the trigger and try to keep people as quarantined as well as they can in hotels and stuff like that, just to bang out these seasons. But until we have like a vaccine, or what do they call it, herd immunity, or this thing just goes away, it's just going to keep going.
Well, and we were also saying that too. Nobody wants to be the first sports league to cancel their season. That's the other thing is, we talked about teams coming back, but none of these leagues want to be the first one to cancel because it'll cause a domino effect. So it's very interesting. And again, we're all on the same page that we hope sports come back, but we also hope it's done safely.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I definitely could imagine. Could you, even speaking of football players, but also you could in hockey actually put probably visors over hockey players probably, and probably get away with it. But baseball, I don't know how you would do that with baseball. That would be really weird if the guys had to wear bubble helmets or something. Like, I don't know. I don't think that would
Coming
work.
up to bat, Mysterio.
They were, I think in South Korea, they started playing baseball again.
They did.
And
yes.
they had the people wearing the full mask, not the full mask, but the surgical mask, like
Right.
while they're batting. I was like, man, that's a weird look, but
Yeah.
if it works, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird too. I mean, you had empty stadiums. They would pipe in like crowd sounds and crowd, and whatnot to try and help the players out. But it was still weird because you're playing in an empty stadium and there's nobody there. But they were playing games. They were playing meaningful games. They started. ESPN was thankful because they actually had something they could broadcast. So ESPN teamed up with the KBO, which is Korea's national baseball league. And it just, it's still not the same.
At times like this, guys, I really miss the world stars of poker and bowling.
Did you ever see that Baltimore Orioles game where they had no crowd? It was,
because there was riots.
Or 2 years, I
think that was 2 seasons ago. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That was
I just thought that was every game for Baltimore where they didn't have anybody in the stands. Sorry, it was too easy. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, Lewis and Cal Ripken, if you're listening, we're sorry for Ray. He didn't mean it. All right? we respect all of you, especially you, Ray Lewis. You know why.
But that was eerie.
Yeah,
I could hear like any foul ball, it hit the stands. You'd hear the clang, clang, clang after, and you're just like, oh man, there's no one there.
It's the new normal, right? The new normal. That's what it's going to be for a while. This is going to definitely reverberate for at least 2 seasons, probably 3, in terms of some form of something's going to be different.
And I watched that slightly different subject. I watched that new Christopher Nolan trailer for Tenet or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like see it in the theater to see it in full effect. And I was like, oh hell no.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to the theater. Are you crazy?
That actually brings up one of our favorite topics here on the show, which is the future of movie theaters.
Yeah.
We think that there's been rumors now that Amazon might be buying AMC. And of course, Lee has put forward the idea that maybe Disney might go ahead and try and just buy theaters and make it like when it's that time again where everybody can come back, they'll just show Disney movies. But Andrew, what do you think is the future of the movie theater? Because like that brings up a really good point. Because like, me and Lee, I believe, are in the same boat. Like I'm not going to the theater anytime soon.
Not going close, not unless they rebuild them.
Yeah, unless I'm wearing like the human condom from Naked Gun. I'm not going close to anything. Like, even that's not enough. Like you got to cover up my face too. I think the movies that are being released digitally now that were originally going to be in theaters have done pretty well.
Yep.
So I think, these companies are like, well, there's still money to be made off these big productions.
Lots of money. Lots of money. Yeah.
There's also a novelty to them right now, right? Like where we are like, oh, that was supposed to be in theaters. I'll check that out. But once that just kind of becomes the norm, it's just going to be us spending more money on something when we already have our Netflix and Hulu that we're paying $5-10 for.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be spending that much because we know those movies will eventually be coming this way, right?
Yeah.
Over a set amount of time, they will be on those streaming services. So I think once that novelty kind of wears off, it's going to be rough. So I think the movie theaters have to come back like they were if we want to keep having these, $300 million Marvel productions. I just don't see them making as much money on the small screen.
It's interesting because, we were talking about like Black Widow, and I said that my prediction is if we're still not able to go to the movie theaters this fall, that will come out on streaming and then eventually Disney Plus. The thing that we're also discussing is it's not just them coming back. We all want movies to come back. Like nobody we've spoken to is like, I hope theaters go away. It's the experience has to change, right? So like maybe stadium seating is not enough, and maybe people being so close, that might be a problem to start. But we were saying if Disney or Amazon really invested themselves into those theaters and made it an experience, that's, in my opinion, how you get people to go back, in the sense of if Disney owned a theater, I mean, they could play anything there at any time, especially for a reduced cost, and keep it going. Or there could be what everybody loves to do right now is a subscription model, which was actually starting to phase into theaters at the end there, where it's you pay a monthly fee, you can see up to 5 movies a month. So I just that any crowd experience is going to have to change, or I'd probably use the word evolve at this point. To better appease the consumer, right? So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. That's a great point you made, though, about the novelty of it wearing off. We hadn't discussed that, and that makes a lot of sense. It's amazing to think how these companies do business, because another side of that might be, well, we just have to get the entire country on our streaming service. That makes up the money to make these Marvel movies. But time will tell. Time will tell completely.
The one thing I would say, I think the Marvel movies in general, or Star Wars, would be fine. I think, those would make $1 billion. Everybody's going to download them anyway. Well, maybe not. I mean, you might have like 4 people crowded into a house buying it for $25, whereas you would have gotten 100, 125 before. People would take advantage of that system for sure. But I think the smaller films, like the ones that would make 50 to 100 million would be in a lot of trouble, or even 200 million. We'll have to see. Maybe
it opens the door for the independent filmmakers too. So that's not a shot back. It's just it has to evolve, right? The industry will have to evolve.
And I wonder, like, how do you pull the trigger now on redesigning these things, or do you wait it out? Do you create like little bubbles that people sit in, and there's decontamination, and then you get in, and then you watch your movie, and then get out, and it decontaminates again? I don't know. Or, do you just wait and be like, hopefully everybody gets vaccinated and this thing goes away, and we go on like polio and all that stuff before it, right?
Yeah. Well,
one interesting thing is that they're saying in New York is what's starting to happen is the rise, the rebirth of the drive-in theater. Yeah. Actually, because of that, right? So because you can just stay in your car and watch the film, and they're actually doing a special event until baseball comes back. If baseball comes back, they're using Yankee Stadium as one of the venues as a drive-in movie theater. And it's really fascinating to see that this could be a way, like, the traditional theater might go the way until it evolves and changes, but as a stopgap, you might see outdoor drive-in movie theaters kind of become a thing again.
I would do it again. And I saw something similar. I don't know if it was fake or not, but a picture of a concert venue. And there was the band on stage, but then instead of a crowd, it was a bunch of cars, like a parking lot.
Oh,
but that's how, like, people were watching the concert that way, just like you're saying, like a movie. But that was a way to take in some live music.
Well, and here's the thing too, guys. With car audio, it's a completely different level than it was 50 years ago. I mean, with Bluetooth technology, like you could actually get a pretty immersive experience in your car right now. Yeah. If you really wanted to do that. So that's an interesting thought that, Ray, we hadn't talked about before. And then to your point too, man, the smart business right now would absolutely start making plans to change how they show movies, just so you're first out of the gate, because all we've heard from the movie companies, meaning the theater companies, is just complaining and, oh, you guys shouldn't have streamed that, which is it's not a winning strategy. You're not going to win that. No one can go to your theater. Don't restrict what you show. Right. But lots of cool ideas. And like, again, the free market should find a way to do something. You evolve or die in these situations. Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Ray, have fun with transitioning with that. Evolve or die. We pride ourselves on our transitions here, man.
Well, we've been talking about streaming services and evolving or dying. And maybe Warner Brothers might actually finally be evolving, because they finally decided to listen to some of their fans this week. I don't know if you guys, I remember at Comic-Con a couple years ago, somebody flying a plane by, they said release the Snyder Cut. And then this week, this is a true story. We don't know if it's the same person or not, but somebody else rented a plane and flew it over Warner Brothers that said thank you. And so of course, Andrew, I want to get your opinion on it. Just came out this week that HBO Max next year, the latest in a long line of new streaming services, where Warner Brothers is competing with itself with DC Universe because it doesn't know what it's doing. But the Snyder Cut is going to come to HBO Max next year. What are your thoughts on that this movement has succeeded, and what do you think we're going to actually get next year when it drops?
Yeah, I think it's cool that the fans are getting what they asked for. Well, they're not, right? It's cool that the fans created a movement that was listened to and moved upon, but you're getting something that's completely different. You're not getting the Snyder Cut like they thought they were, right? Mm-hmm. You're getting something bigger, and maybe that's better, but it sounds like they're creating it as something that, for this streaming service in particular, that you will eat in bite size as opposed to going to a theater and seeing it in one sitting, right?
Yeah.
This thing is going to be over 4 hours, they're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe episodic, with cliffhangers. And I was reading the quotes in that story about, I think it was Snyder's wife was like, yeah, we're making something that couldn't be done in theaters. And it was like, you had one job, man. You had a job. Your job was to make a movie. What the hell were you making? I know it's a quote taken out of context a little bit, but it's like, that was your job, was to make the Justice League movie. Yeah. And that doesn't sound like what we're getting. It sounds like we're getting a miniseries. What was going to be a movie turned into a miniseries. I love that the talent's coming back to flesh this out. I wasn't a big fan of the Justice League story to begin with, so that's a concern.
Horrible. Yeah.
That is the backbone of this, no matter what. How much of that was Joss Whedon's doing, we don't know, but the story just in general, it just wasn't compelling, and that's still going to be here. So we'll see. It's interesting. At the very least, it's going to get me watching, and I think it'll get both of you watching too. Like,
oh yeah,
mission accomplished, right?
Yes, exactly. No, for nothing else, I'm thinking about getting HBO Max for that. Just for that. So I mean, it's going to get subscribers, and that's what they need, and they want a strong showing. And even if it takes them a little while, like, it's something that especially now AT&T, which of course is now the parent company of Warner Brothers, they want their return on investment, and this is a good way to, it costs them, it's going to cost them supposedly up to $30 million to supposedly shoot all the new stuff that they need to shoot, or post-production work and all this other stuff. But if it gets you $150 million worth of subscribers, like, it's totally worth it in the long run. So I will definitely be watching. I really just hope that we don't find out in the end that everybody's mom is named Martha. Darkseid has a mom named Martha.
Why did you say that name?
Steppenwolf has a mom named Martha. It's just everybody's Martha. It's just
Martha has a mother named Martha.
Yeah, it's Martha Jr., Martha the Third.
Was that the movie where Batman emailed Wonder Woman and he did all caps, where he's like, I know who you are? And I was like,
yes,
this might be the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
So Ray, first off, excellent transition. That was well done. Two is I actually have notes here on this remake. Or this continuation. And I want all of you to know that if you want to know what I wrote, you have to tune into our next episode, which we're filming on Sunday. Look at that. Teasing it. Actually, the most pressing question is, are they going to fix that frickin' mustache? That's what needs to be done.
That's going to be 15 of the $30 million in post-production.
Well, above all, that is one of the worst things I have ever seen. One of the worst decisions I've ever seen, where you got to, first off, that shows you the power of Tom Cruise, where he was able to tell Henry Cavill, you're not shaving off your mustache. But I'm Superman. I'm Superman. Yeah. And you're not shaving off your mustache. Now, kneel before Tom. Like, he did something like that. All right, that's number one. But I do want to talk, I'll go full in depth in our actual episode here just for time reasons. But the one thing I did want to bring up on this show, especially with you, Andrew, here is this. I read an article today that this is a bad thing because it's teaching fans the wrong thing, that, you shouldn't be able to change something.
Right.
And I thought about this deeply because at first I was like, maybe this is right. Maybe they got a point here because you can't just change things. And then I really dove into it in my mind. I said, you know what? Not with this film, because first off, there was some horrendous circumstances that kept Snyder from finishing it.
Yeah,
Really bad.
for sure.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, he lost
his daughter.
his child. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to go deep into that because it's very depressing. So that's why he left. He left for an absolutely understandable reason.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the movie we were left with was, not true to canon, is not even it doesn't do justice how bad that situation was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was just not becoming of those characters in my mind. It had its moments, but it wasn't a great movie. So I reject that article, that op-ed, that we're not getting something we want. Because here's the thing, the last movie that did this, Sonic the Hedgehog, ended up being a hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anything, and I'm asking you this, Andrew, because you're immersed in this culture, this geek culture with us, right? It's not bad to listen to fans with things like this because we know these characters, we love these characters, and they're not your characters, right?
Right.
Sonic does not belong to you; it belongs to us. The Justice League belongs to us. And I mean that. There's a call to action there, where I trust Snyder, but they made a mistake here with how they did that film.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not they're making a mistake by listening to the fan base.
I go back to Mass Effect 3's ending, and there was an uproar over that and the petition, and then BioWare buckled and redid the ending and tried to flesh it out for people, right? And that was like very much giving into the fans. And I was like, man, that's setting a bad precedent for things. Like, you're the artist, right? Like, maybe people didn't like your vision, but so what? That's what you wanted to make, and that's what you made. Live with it. Don't change it because someone told you to change it. That sets a bad precedent. Sonic, I think there was the petition, but it was also, I think, just people mocking it openly. Like, what is this thing? It's ugly. And I think then you have a meeting, and it's like, I think a lot of people are like, they're right. Like, this is not the character we thought we were. This is not the vision we thought we were going with. So that one's a little different. And then I think Zack Snyder, his circumstances are very different too. I like that he's getting a chance to finish this thing.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not what he intended to make in the first place, but they're kind of audibling into something new. That's what it sounds like, at least. Like, let's bring it back and try to fix this thing. We'll probably never know how much was his and how much was Joss's.
Sure. And I'm okay with that.
But they do get a second chance to make something different. I hope it's not just a vehicle to sell this new streaming service.
Yeah.
And then we have a new petition for delete the Snyder Cut.
Well, they're going to lose people. People are going to delete it right away. I mean, here's the thing. You brought up Mass Effect, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the difference between Mass Effect and Sonic and specifically Justice League is, Mass Effect is an original, correct? Like, DC has, these characters have 70 years of history.
Right.
This is not just something. So, like, Mass Effect's an original story. So I agree with you. If it's your creation, that's the way it is. And we deal with this with Star Wars every day. All right? Like, that's just the way it is. But when it comes to DC, I mean, and like Ray is a massive Batman fan. That was not Batman. I mean, this drove Affleck to rehab, and he said that openly.
Yeah.
And then he endorsed it today. He endorsed the Snyder Cut today, which I was shocked. I was shocked that the top actor in the film comes out and says, I can't wait to see this. So I think it's supposed to testament to the fans. It's also to Snyder and the circumstances that kept him away. And I haven't heard from Joss Whedon, but I'd be surprised if he wasn't supportive of this as well, due to the circumstances. Yeah. Which says a lot too, because he was kind of thrown into that very quickly. Like, they told him, finish it. Just get something out in the theater. I don't care what it is.
The thing with Sonic, people immediately made the film look better. Just like, hey, look at this, and then everybody like is retweeting like, oh my God, this guy at home just made the character look better in like 2 minutes. Whereas DC, like you're talking about, there's 75 years of history or more than that. but there's also a billion different storylines and visions of these characters. So I think it's a little different. Like we all have kind of in our mind the perfect Batman or Wonder Woman, and they try to hit on that a little bit, but they also have creative freedom like any comic writer or artist to take it in their own direction. But it's a bigger gamble, right? Like it's a much bigger gamble that you need to hit a line that appeases most people, right?
Sure.
Or at least just,
I mean, that's the Last Jedi too, right?
Yeah, at least you're just kind of comfortable with it. But you can't go too far with it. You can't go too gonzo with the designs or story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do, I think even, Infinity Gauntlet, that story is completely different than what ended up being Infinity War and, the Russo brothers take. But I appreciated what they did. I had a good time with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has to make sense to the characters. It has to make sense to the properties, and I think that, I mean, we're all, you all have to be open. I mean, I still remember, even though as a little kid, how much people hated Michael Keaton before he was Batman, or even more recently, Heath Ledger before he was the Joker. Then you see what they did with it, and you're like, oh no, that's phenomenal. You got to, like you said, you got to do something that's going to resonate with the fans, and maybe because it was this mixed amalgamation of Whedon and Snyder's work, or maybe they went off the rails and maybe there was too many corporate guys leaning in and saying what to do. Like there could be a bunch of different reasons, but this hit all the wrong notes with everyone, and it's like there was not so little for us to glom onto as hardcore comic book fans, which is why I think that it was part of the reason why it was so disappointing for many of us.
Yeah, and you know what? This could be worse. It could be better. No matter what, we get something new to watch. And that's awesome.
Yep.
Right.
That's true.
We kind of win out no matter what.
The last note I'll say on this is that this is actually not going to be the first DC movie that they've done this with, because I think 10 years ago they released the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I bought that, and it was really good. I mean, it was really, really good. It was movie out of time. But listen, I think we're all hoping for the best. With this movie, we want it to be good. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully they get to film it soon, or I don't know if they did already. There was some talks that they did some filming already, but I don't know. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen with filming movies moving forward too.
Yeah, that's true. Get rid of that mustache. Sorry, I had to say it again.
So while we have you, Andrew, obviously we talked about some of your reviews. We've also talked about comic books. Something that we're doing here at Geeks Who Like Sports is we're trying to come up with a new scale of how to review things. And we wanted to get your input here. It's the first time that me and Lee are revealing this to anyone.
Breaking news.
Yes. Okay. So we've come up with a variety of different scales. There's like the Batman scale. There's the DC comic villain scale. There's the Marvel comic villain scale. And we go on. So we're gonna give you the Marvel superhero scale 0 to 10, and let us know what you think where our rankings are, as how when we go forward maybe scoring things, if we're like, all right, this game gets a Thor, then people know what that equates that to a number.
And that's got to be a 4, right?
Okay, okay, cool. Now, this is interesting. All right,
the authority is here.
So no, that's good. That's good. So 0, we start with, for Marvel superheroes, 0, we start with Butterball.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Who was actually, I really felt bad for the character when you find out what ends up happening to him at the end with Taskmaster and stuff. But like, on the surface, Butterball is terrible.
Yeah, and it's a ball, so you got a 0.
That's good. He's a 0. 1 we gave an Ant-Man.
What?
Yeah. Size-changing heroes, no.
Very small. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Small
but
number.
Also, like, he's also, I mean, like, look, especially the Scott Lang version. Like, I mean, at least if you're Hank Pym, like, at least it's like, okay, you're the scientist supreme, right? Like, you're like super smart. If it was him, we'll say this is the Scott Lang Ant-Man is a 1 specifically. Okay. 2, Hawkeye.
Sure, he sucks. Yeah, he's just bow and arrow to a superhero fight.
Right, exactly. So right.
I ran out of arrows.
Yeah. 3, we put Black Widow.
Ooh, you're gonna get in trouble.
Probably.
Like, you have Butterball, a no-name character.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your scale is just all heavy hitters. Well, why don't you have more no-namers?
I was thinking about that, but like I feel like if we don't put enough no-namer, if we put too many no-namers in it, that people aren't going to know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The 1 to 5 would suck, but you got to have Thor as 4. Maybe you go 4-point scale. Thor's awesome as the top.
Yeah, well, I mean, because Thor is a 6. Thor's a 6.
Okay.
All right. 4 was Hulk.
What are you doing? What are you doing? This is the worst scale I've ever heard.
Right, he's taking your just.
No, it's fine. This is why we brought an expert in for his opinion. So where would you put Hulk in on the scale from 0 to 10?
I'm thinking he's one of the most powerful characters ever, one of the most dynamic. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde vibe. He's so cool, man. He's got to be like 8 to 10.
Wait, so you would put him ahead of Wolverine, Captain America, or Spider-Man?
No, but I wouldn't have all of them on the scale then.
Well, that's a good point too. So maybe the scale is too heavy loaded with, like you said, big name characters.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, immediately Scott Lang. I mean, Ant-Man's cool. I don't care what you say. He's flying around on ants. And...
I disagree.
Are you reading the new book? It's good.
I am not reading the new book. That's fair.
The new Ant-Man and the new Hawkeye are both very good. So,
okay. I have heard good things of the new Hawkeye. So, all right. We'll have to look back. We'll have to go back. We'll have to reanalyze our scale. We'll get some more names.
What was the average score? Who was our average score?
Our average was Storm. That's 5.
Okay.
Maybe we should go through a villains chart.
Let's hear that. I mean, villains might be easier, right?
Maybe. I mean, villains was hard. So villains was hard too.
DC villains, because that's my favorite one.
You like the DC villains one?
Yeah, one of my favorite worst villains of all time is on that list.
Okay, let me see. No. So we put him on the Batman scale. So on the Batman scale, okay, we'll do the Batman. 0 is Crazy Quilt.
Yeah, okay. This is Batman's villains, correct?
Batman's villains. Yeah, Batman's villains.
Crazy Quilt.
Yeah, that's perfect.
1 is Egghead.
Okay.
2 is King Tut.
Oh God. Okay.
3 is Calendar Man.
Yes.
All right.
4. Now we start to actually. 4 is Killer Croc.
Ooh. Okay.
5 is Mr. Freeze.
Jeez.
Well, it's hard because
he's just an average villain.
Well, because Batman it's hard because he's got such a great rogues gallery. 6 is Two-Face.
Okay.
7 is Catwoman. 8 is Penguin. 9 is Riddler, and 10 is the Joker.
Yeah, I would say the only one I would change would be Mr. Freeze, and I might put Man-Bat there or something like that.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like, Mr. Freeze should be in that 7, 8, 9 range. Like, the good Mr. Freeze stories are, about his lost love and all that are so good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's true. I mean, the thing is also, you gotta remember, Mr. Freeze has only been really a dynamic character for the past 30 years, right? Like, he was a joke for so long until really the cartoon really turned him around. It was really Paul Dini's work with that animated series that turned him into this tragic character, and everybody's like, "Oh, Mr. Freeze is awesome." So
Ray,
but that's a fair Batman. I like that as well.
We should take Catwoman off the list, considering she's carrying Batman's baby.
I was thinking that, but then the problem is then also, and trying to be, I guess, forward thinking, then we don't have any women on the list. Do we put like a Lady Shiva there somewhere? Do we
Harley Quinn?
See, but but then you get the comparison because the Joker's already on the list, and her too. She's broken so far away from the Joker's shadow, especially everything they've done with the most recent run and the movies and everything. Like, so trying to pay homage to what the character is now, I don't like. That's why it was hard, because both Catwoman and Harley Quinn. I mean, even Poison Ivy. Maybe Poison Ivy's 7.
She's great.
Yeah, I think great. We'll put Poison Ivy instead of Catwoman at number 7. That work? There we go. So
Catwoman's always kind of gone over the line, right? Like, just kind of swimming between the two, like doing something terrible. He has to stop her, but then he needs her help, and then they have a relationship now, and or they always have. Yeah.
All right, so those are the 2 changes. So you like that scale more? We remove Mr. Freeze.
Yes.
Man-Bat is at a 5, and Poison Ivy replaces Catwoman at 7. Everything else is pretty solid.
That works.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll retool our Marvel superhero
I would
scale.
just throw that away. Yeah.
That's why we asked. That's why we asked.
Yes, we brought on an expert for our. We've got a few of these. We're not going to go through all of them, but that's good. You got great input from an expert.
Use that lens. You have the right lens for the villains. Just apply that to the heroes.
Villains are easier heroes. That's true.
Yeah,
there's a lot of heroes have the same number.
That's the thing, right? Is that so many heroes I think would fall into the same category. But either way, last thing before we let you go, Andrew, we'd be remiss without mentioning that you are also, of course, an accomplished author. Lee is also an accomplished author. You've written a book with Chris Kluwe, former punter for the Minnesota Vikings, called Prime a few years ago. Just wanted to first off, congratulations. It's not easy writing a book.
Oh God, yeah. Well, the writing's easy. The editing afterwards is what's rough.
Yeah,
sucks.
Yeah, it really does suck. But
write it again. Just write it again.
So I'm on my third novel with Chris now. We're almost done with our third.
Nice.
We have the sequel to Prime with a publisher right now. They're going through that, and then we're doing a 1930s noir murder mystery book that we're 2 to 3 chapters away from finishing right now.
Nice. Congrats. That's awesome, dude. Fantastic. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, between the video games and the comic books, you're busy, and now writing your novels, you're a busy man, my friend.
Yeah, I am. And a dad. That's my primary job, is being a cool dad. She's into games now, so I went from being like, leave me alone, to being like, you're the coolest.
I know the feeling well. Ray gave my son a Switch for his 4th birthday. He's 6 now. And between him and my wife, I don't see them anymore. No, it's actually going very well. It was one of the best gifts ever. I do have to ask you. So Ray and I have, and this is like the famous conversation from the movie, right? Ray and I have toyed around with the idea of actually writing a book together, a fantasy book. Now, my books are both nonfiction and they're business based, but I've always wanted to write science fiction fantasy. Okay, I just have a massive respect for the genre. So my question to you is, for Ray and I, is, if you're doing this together, if you could briefly, how do you do your writing process with a partner? And then, like you said, I know we have good stories and rich stories, but you did say the editing process, and I know that well from nonfiction. I can't even imagine fiction. What's your process? What's your mantra? How do you do that? Because it can get very stressful at times. How do you get to the finished product?
So when we did Prime, we had no idea what we were doing, and we were just excited. We like sci-fi. I have this idea. I pitched Chris on this idea of like Jurassic Park in space, with like weird creatures eating dozens of people instead of just a T-Rex eating one, right? Like, we're just going to blow this up on this resort island. We're like, great, let's go with it. We outlined that book in 2 days.
Wow.
We had all the beats of the chapters, and then we kind of alternated, writing. Like, Chris, you start here, and then I go over it and edit it, and then I would pick up where he left off, and then he would edit that. So we'd had a very consistent tone in how it flowed. Like, we both had our really significant edits on this thing.
Yeah.
I would introduce characters that I loved, because this outline was very loose, right? It's just like 3 pages total. I would introduce characters I loved, and it's like, next time I come back in and I'm writing, I'm going to continue that guy's arc, and then I read the edit Chris sends me or the new stuff he sends me, and it's like, he just killed my guy. So I'm like texting him, like, dude, you killed Wendell. And he's like, yeah, that guy sucked. And it's like, no, man. Like, he's like, no, you can't have him here. We got to go here. So we have arguments like that.
Yeah.
Because we have those arguments, for the next book, Splice, which is in the works now, we spent 4 months outlining, and we hit every beat. And we'd spend, an hour on the phone just going through every little thing, and had that all just put together. And that, Chris filled in a lot of those gaps on his own. I did like a lot of the outline and all that. For the third book, that worked pretty well. Like, it's a really good, I'm really proud of that book. Prime was like a good experiment, right? Like, we had fun doing it. There's some good bits to it, but it could have been so much better now that we know what we're doing. For this next book, I'm the main author, and then I create everything. There's no outline. There's nothing like that. I send my text to Chris, and then he goes over it and kind of polishes it and kind of makes tweaks or changes and edits, and then sends it back to me, and I look at it, yay, nay, change little things, continue on, send it to him. So It's a very different process. Everybody has a different style. The one thing that works is like Chris and I are best buds. It seems like you guys are really close too.
Yep.
If you can work together in any kind of capacity and figure this out, just start riffing and go for it and see what works best for you. It might be outlining. It might just be here's the first 5 paragraphs. And what I've been doing with Chris right now is I'll send him 1,000 words. I won't go below that or above that. Like it's a solid, it might be 1,026 or 980, but I'm always shooting for 1,000 for him to work with, and it's worked really well.
That's cool. So the prime, the writing process of him killing your guy, that must be how The Walking Dead is made, and then now you're on a Stephen King level. I get it. I get that 100%.
It's probably not that far from like the writer's room for TV episodes, right? Like where you have like a bunch of writers working together and some fall off and then they come back and they're like, "The hell did you do to my story?" You know, like
Game of Thrones where they all just fell off. All of them.
Yeah. But you got to figure out what works for you and what doesn't, and it's so much fun though. And the one thing I'll say is I've tried writing on my own dozens of books since childhood, right? Like I've always wanted to write stories, and I always get too much in my head, and I will be like, "Oh, this is terrible," or I don't think I can continue this. It's just too much. Whereas if you have a writing partner, you have this energy, like this collective energy, where you send something to someone and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome," and then you start talking about it and you get excited about it again. And that has not ended in any of these 3 books. Like that excitement has just maintained in all 3 of our endeavors so far. So I think it's
in the writing too. Yeah, it comes in the writing. So you've proven a few things here. One is that Ray and I absolutely need to write a book.
Yes.
And B is, and this is an ongoing thing, Ray must fly to Philadelphia to do this, right? He has to come over here for 2 to 4 months so we can write this book.
Yeah, maybe walk is the safest way, or drive.
That's a lot of Pokemon, man. That's a lot of Pokemon. Listen, there is no technology that exists that we could do this across the country. So he needs to fly here.
Yes, you need to be locked
Ray
together, holding hands as you're discussing it.
Yeah. Yeah, or we could both fly to St. Paul or the Twin Cities and just do it there with you.
Yeah,
we'll work that way.
Fun. We'll wear masks. We'll make it work.
Yeah,
and then we'll go play Pokemon Go, slowly driving through Andrew's neighborhood.
Now there's 3 of us in the car, right? All with hoods on. What's that guy doing? Shh. Gotta catch this Magikarp.
But do it. Write the book. Seriously, it's so much fun. You guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, and we'll reference this episode. I think I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I get royalties, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely not.
You'll get a special thanks. We'll give you a special thanks.
Yeah, you get an acknowledgement. You know how this works.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we do want to give Andrew a special thanks for, of course, being on the show today.
This is fun,
Thank
guys.
you.
This
was great. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on. We really appreciate it, buddy. It's good to see you. It's good to hear from you.
You too, man.
I mean, it's
once year at E3, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And now there's no E3, so now you have to become a regular on the podcast.
Yeah, and I'll have you on for the comic books too.
I'd love to come on whenever whenever you want me on, I will be there, my friend, and I'll bring Lee too if you want me.
Lee as well. Let's continue this over on my show, and then we'll come back here sometime or something.
There you go. I like that idea. That sounds like a plan. So on that note, though, again, Andrew, thank you so much for your time, dude. Again, go to GameInformer.com, read his words. Prime is available on Amazon Kindle. Go read that. Spectacular Comic Book Podcast, wherever podcasts are heard. Definitely on iTunes, I know for sure. That's how I listen to it. And again, for Lee in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, thank you for not torturing me today by eating a cheesesteak, by the way, buddy. He does that sometimes
still plenty of days in the week, Ray.
Don't worry. Well.
Have a soft pretzel prime for Sunday already.
All right. Well, until then, thank you all for listening or watching. This has been another edition of the Geeks Who Like Sports Leaderboard interview. We'll see you next time.